think it's working. We have some spinning things. All right. I think it actually worked. Welcome back, everyone, to another evening of social distance reading. Story time. We're going to pick back up where we left off in Zoom. Have our page turning sound effects. All right. How is everybody? I hope everybody has been well. I hope still surviving quarantine, haven't gone crazy yet. Hope those of you who can go for walks have gotten outside a little bit. I know it was gorgeous out here today. All right. So we're a little late, so I'll just dive right on in. So this one is called Metamorphosis. There are 3 deaths. The first is when the body ceases to function. The second is when the body is consigned to the grave. The third is that moment sometime in the future when your name is spoken for the last time. So you wait in this lobby until the third death. There are long tables with coffee, tea, and cookies. You can help yourself. There are people here from all around the world, and with a little effort, you can strike up convivial small talk. Just be aware that your conversation may be interrupted at any moment by the callers, who broadcast your new friend's name to indicate that there will never again be another remembrance of him by anyone on earth. Your friend slumps, face like a shattered and reglued plate, saddened even though the callers tell him kindly that he's off to a better place. No one knows where that better place is or what it offers, because no one existing through that door has ever returned to tell us. Tragically, many people leave just as their loved ones arrive, since the loved ones were the only ones doing the remembering. We all wag our heads at that typical timing. The whole place looks like an infinite airport waiting area. There are many famous people from the history books here. If you get bored, you can strike out in any given direction, past aisles and aisles of seats. After many days of walking, you'll start to notice that people look different, and you'll hear the tones of foreign languages. People congregate among their own kind. And one sees the spontaneous emergence of territories that mirror the pattern on the surface of the planet. With the exception of the oceans, you're traversing a map of the Earth. There are no time zones here. No one sleeps, even though they mostly wish they could. The place is evenly lit by fluorescent lights. Not everyone is sad when the callers enter the room and shout out the next list of names. On the contrary, some people beg and plead, prostrating before themselves at the caller's feet. These are generally the folks who have been here a long time, too long. Especially those who are remembered for unfair reasons. For example, take the farmer over there, who drowned in a small river 200 years ago. Now his farm is the site of a small college, and the tour guides each week tell his story. So he's stuck, and he's miserable. The more his story is told, the more the details drift. He is utterly alienated from his name. It is no longer identical with him, but continues to bind. The cheerless woman across the way, she is praised as a saint, even though the roads in her heart were complicated. The gray-haired man at the vending machine was lionized as a war hero, then demonized as a warlord, and finally canonized as a necessary firebrand between 2 moments in history. He waits with aching heart for his statues to fall. And that is the curse of this room. Since we live in the heads of those who remember us, we lose control of our lives and become who they want us to be. It's a good little short one. How much of ourselves live on in the heads of other lives, in those memories? What an interesting existence, a purgatory of memory of sorts. I'm not sure if that would make me want to be memorable or not. All right. Gonna check in here, make sure everybody can see the things. Okay, cool. Looks like people can see things. Excellent. All right. This next one is missing. The debate about God's gender is misdirected. What we call God is actually a married couple. When they decided to create humans in their own image, they compromised and manufactured approximately equal numbers of both genders. Each female she creates is close to her heart. She becomes the woman for just a moment as she shapes her, and in this way is able to try out different heights and weights, emotional depths and IQs, skin tones and eye colors. The same applies to every male, shaped by him. On certain nights, when they're feeling liberal, each creates a member of the opposite sex, just to see what it's like. When you die, you go to live in their large home and enjoy a parent child relationship with them. Every human in the world is a child to them, and they devote tremendous effort to their parenting skills. It is heartening to see that they learn from us in the same manner that all parents learn from their children. For example, it turns out they didn't know how to express the workings of their universe's equations, so they are greatly impressed with the ideas of their physicist children, who phrase clearly to them for the first time what they wrought. On the other hand, it would be misleading to tell you that it's always been a happy family, because there was a period of time when that wasn't true. Their marriage was an arranged one, and over the millennia, they grew unhappy with each other's company. By careful observation of their humans over the years, they learned that sometimes couples don't work out, that people separate, adulterate, divorce, and none of it is so terrible that the universe crashes down. And so, in the manner that all parents learn from their children, they separated. There were many acts of bitterness. They stung each other with unfair accusations, using information so personal it shouldn't have been broached. Hurt in an idea of quick revenge, she created a planet of all females. He retorted with a solar system of males. She encircled his line of planets with a band of women of meteors. The two of them armed the new humans to battle it out, women against men. Both sides were supplied with weapons, ranging from sarcasm to tanks. But something strange happened. The planets and meteors were silent. Orbits dragged like slow whispers through the empty space. No battles waged, not a shot was fired. Upon close examination, they discovered that the monosexual inhabitants were miserable, crushed like existentialists under a feeling of the absence of something terribly important, something they couldn't put their fingers on. Eventually, she dropped her hands from her hips, and he from his. She spoke the first tender words in months, asking if he was hungry. He responded by offering to cook something for both. The planets of men and women drifted back together, and the race started again, with its pursuits, seductions, choices, competitions, temptations, arguments, and a great cosmic sigh of relief as they all fell emancipated into each other's arms. Uh, good little, good little togetherness. Yeah, a lot of times in our divisioning off into our little gender bubbles and our desperations for gender equalities, we oftentimes end up isolating ourselves more in our efforts to bring things more together. Um, Sometimes we need a little distance to be together too. This next one is called spirals. In the afterlife, you discover that your creator is a species of small, dim-witted, obtuse creatures. They look vaguely human, but they are smaller and more brutish. They are singularly unintelligent. They knit their brows when they try to follow what you are saying. It will help if you speak slowly, and it sometimes helps to draw pictures. At some point, their eyes will glaze over and they will nod as though they understand you, but they will have lost the thread of the conversation entirely. A word of warning: when you wake up in the afterlife, you will be surrounded by these creatures. They will be pushing and shoving in around you, rubbernecking, howling to get a look at you, and they will all be asking you the same thing. Do you have answer? Do you have answer? Don't be frightened. These creatures are kind and innocuous. You will probably ask them what they are talking about. They will knit their brows, plumbing your words like a mysterious proverb. Then they will timidly repeat, do you have answer? Where the heck am I, you may ask? A scribe faithfully marks down your every word for future record. Mother and daughter creatures peer out at you, hopefully from observation decks. To understand where you are, it will help to have some background. At some point in the development of their society, these creatures began to wonder, why are we here? What is the purpose of our existence? These turned out to be very difficult questions to answer. So difficult, in fact, that rather than attacking the question directly, they decided it might be easier to build supercomputing machines devoted to finding the answers. So they invested the labor of tens of generations to engineer these. We are their machines. This seemed a clever strategy to the elders of their community. However, they overlooked a problem. To build a machine smarter than you, it has to be more complex than you, and the ability to understand the machine begins to slip away. When you wear out and stop functioning, your software is re-uploaded into their laboratory so they can probe it. This is where you awaken. And as soon as you make your first sound, they crowd around you to learn one thing. Do you have an answer? They don't realize that when they dropped us into our terrarium, we didn't waste a moment. We built societies, roads, novels, catapults, telescopes, rifles, and every variety of our own machines. They have a hard time detecting this progress of ours, much less understanding it, because they simply can't follow the complexity. When you try to explain to them what has happened, they cannot keep up with your rapid and unfathomable speech, so they set about their dim-witted nodding. It makes them sad, and the most insightful among these creatures can sometimes be seen weeping in the corners, because they know their project has failed. They believe we have deduced the answer, but are too advanced to communicate it at their level. They don't guess that we have no answers for them. They don't guess that our main priority is to answer these questions for ourselves. They don't guess that we are unable and that we build machines of increasing sophistication to address our own mysteries. You try to explain this to the creatures, but it is fruitless. Not only because they don't understand you, but also because you realize how little you understand about our own machines. All the machines we build. And so this one really gets me. It takes off a whole section of my brain um, that was really fired up by this wonderful book called John Dies at the End. And I forget the author's name at the moment, but you have the title so you can look it up on your own. It was also made into a movie that is surprisingly uh, equal to the book. Uh, but in this sort of dark, weird world that John Dies at the End, the whole one of the central premises is that there's a whole other dimension that they end up accessing. And in that dimension, their machines are not made out of metal and plastic and silicone, but instead are all made out of organic material. And this this notion of organic machinery, and also this realization, this understanding that that we are also organic machinery. And realizing that at some point, rather than building machines out of organic material, we chose the other route. And it's just as possible that there are machines made out of all sorts of other materials and consciousnesses and insights, maybe smaller or greater than our own. It'd be quite a weird world. All right, this one's called Scales. For a while, we were worried about a separation from God, but our fears were eased when the prophets revealed a new understanding. We are God's organs, his eyes and fingers, the means by which he explores his world. We all felt better about this deep sense of connection. We are a part of God's biology. But it slowly grew clearer that we have less to do with his sensory organs and more to do with his internal organs. The atheist and the theist agreed that it is only through us that he lives. When we abandon him, he dies. We felt honored at first to be the cells that form God's body, and then it became clearer that we are God's cancer. He's lost control of the small parts that constitute him. We are dividing and multiplying. God and his doctors have tried to stanch the growth. The tumor is sprouting that makes his breath difficult and endangers his circulation. But we're too robust. Throw storms and quakes and pestilence our way, and we scatter, regroup, and plan better. We become resistant and keep dividing. He has finally reached his peace with this and lies quietly in his bed at the convergence of green antiseptic corridors. Sometimes he wonders if we're doing it on purpose. Are his beloved subjects yearning to know his body, to metastasize throughout his greatness by way of his arterial systems? He doesn't suspect that we're innocent of the journey. Then he begins to notice something. While he cannot stop us or hurt us, there's something that can. He watches us turning to the smaller scales to battle our own leukemias, lymphomas, sarcomas, melanomas. He witnesses his subjects anointing themselves in chemotherapy, basking in the glow of radiation therapy. He watches his humans recklessly chewed up by the trillions of cells that constitute them. And suddenly, God bolts up in his bed with a revelation. Everything that creates itself upon the backs of smaller scales will by those same scales be consumed. Well, my, that one's so fitting as we are all sequestered here in our little uh houses against our battle in this tiny little virus, this small scale having such an impact on a grand scale. Oh, the scales. My. um yeah, perhaps we are just a smaller virus or a larger virus, um in a even larger body, being ravaged by our own smaller viruses. Uh-huh. All right, yeah, see how short some of these are. They get right to it. It's so fun. All right, this one's called Adhesion. We are the product of large beings that camp out on asteroids and call themselves collectors. The collectors run billions of experiments on the timescales of universes, subtly tuning the galaxy parameters this way and that, making bangs bigger and lesser, dialing fundamental physical constants a hair's breadth at a time. They are continually sharpening their pencils and squinting into telescopes. When the collectors have solved the problem that was formerly mysterious to them, they destroy that universe and recycle the materials into their next experiment. Our life on Earth represents an experiment in which they are trying to figure out what makes people stick together. Why do some relationships work well while others fail? This is completely mysterious to them. When when their theoreticians could not see a pattern, they proposed this problem as an interesting question to explore. And so our universe was born. The collectors construct lives of parametric experiments, men and women who adhere well but are shot past one another too briefly, brushing by in a library, passing on the step of a city bus, wandering just for a moment. And the collectors need to understand what men and women do about the momentum of their individual life plans, when in the rush and glare of the masses they are put together as they move in opposite directions. Can they turn the momentum of choices and plans? The collectors sharpen their pencils against their asteroids and make careful study. They research men and women who are not naturally adherent, but are held together by circumstance. Those pressed together by obligation. Those who learn to be happy by forcing adhesion. Those who cannot live without adhesion, and those who fight it. Those who don't need it, and those who sabotage it. Those who find adhesion when they least expect it. When you die, you are brought before a panel of collectors. They debrief you and struggle to understand your motivations. Why did you decide to break off this relationship? What did you appreciate about that relationship? What was wrong with so and so, who seemed to have everything you wanted? After trying and failing to understand you, they send you back to see if another round of experimentation makes it any clearer. It is for this reason only that our universe still exists. The collectors are past deadline and over budget, but they are having a hard time bringing this study to a conclusion. They are mesmerized. The brightest among them cannot quantify it. My. Yeah. our whole our whole existence based on understanding our connections to each other and the relationships we form. That mystery could keep going on forever, couldn't it? A little perpetual motion machine of falling in and out of love. I will say, I am so grateful for all of the relationships that I have, um, and especially the ones that I don't understand. There's so many that I don't understand why that person's interested in me, why they like me. I look at them, I look up to them in so many ways, and I'm often astounded that they'll give me even just a moments of their time, let alone call me or write me and miss me so dearly. Yeah, I don't understand, but my do I love it. Um, I love all of you so much, and while we're stuck here away, it reminds me even more how much those relationships and connections are important to me, um, in in my life and in so many of these stories obviously necessarily touch on some realm of spirituality, um, and I've explored many different realms, and as many of you know, I've settled on some firmly rooted, rather atheistic, humanistic. Um, I don't know what's going on, but just be kind, just be a good person. Um, but one thing that I've fundamentally uh, agreed is important to me, and I've often described it as my own personal religion. It is connection. I think the connections that we form with each other are the most important thing that we have. They're the only thing that I've seen um, come to being in the same ways that life and consciousness and everything else does. I think they're their own beings. I think each of those connections are their own existence, um, and they deserve their own lives. All right, this one's called Angst. I have to reply to Paul. Right? He's so good. He thinks like all the things that we all think. Um, all right, this one's called Angst. As humans, we spend our time seeking big, meaningful experiences. So the afterlife may surprise you when your body wears out. We expand back into what we really are, which is, by Earth standards, enormous. We stand 10,000 kilometers tall in each of 9 dimensions, and we live with others like us in a celestial commune. When we reawaken in these, our true bodies, we immediately begin to notice that our gargantuan colleagues suffer a deep sense of angst. Our job is the maintenance and upholding of the cosmos. Universal collapse is imminent, and we engineer wormholes to act as structural support. We labor relentlessly on the edge of cosmic disaster. If we don't execute our jobs flawlessly, the universe will recollapse. Ours is complex, intricate, and important work. After 3 centuries of this toil, we have the option to take a vacation. We all choose the same destination. We project ourselves into lower dimensional creatures. We project ourselves into the tiny, delicate, 3 dimensional bodies that we call humans. And we are born onto the resort we call Earth. The idea, on such vacations, is to capture small experiences. On the Earth, we care only about our immediate surroundings. We watch comedy movies. We drink alcohol and enjoy music. We form relationships, fight, break up, and start again. When we're in a human body, we don't care about universal collapse. Instead, we care only about a meeting of the eyes, a glimpse of bare flesh, the caressing tones of a loved voice, joy, love, light, the orientation of a houseplant, the shade of a paint stroke, the arrangement of hair. Those are good vacations that we take on Earth, replete with our little dramas and fusses. The mental relaxation is unspeakably precious to us. And when we're forced to leave by the wearing out of those delicate little bodies, it is not uncommon to see us lying prostrate in the breeze of the solar winds, tools in hand, looking out into the cosmos, wet-eyed, searching for meaninglessness. Mm-hmm. Oh, all the little small things. Ah, yeah. A lot of times we get so wrapped up in searching this grand meaning in our lives, and we overlook and forget about all those tiny little moments, those little touches, those little moments of electricity between skin, um, that glance that your partner, your lover, your friend, your future best friend, your cat, your plant, all of these little connections and relationships again. Um, you can see here where his head goes. You can see that David Eagleman is just as big of a nerd as we all are. He's just as human as we all are. He's just as big of a thinker, a lover, a tinkerer, and he's just as curious as we are. Man, do I love the way that he's phrased all of these things. I feel like he's reaching into my brain and pulling out all of the things that keep me up at night, and he's managed to coalesce them into these beautiful little stories. And hopefully, if I say enough nice things about him, he won't sue me for reading his books out loud. Um, all right, all right. This one is called Oz. At the outset of the afterlife, you find a scroll that informs you. In the scrawl of an ancient scribe, that you now have the opportunity to meet in the creator of the universe, but only if you are among the most courageous. You wonder what magnitude of maker could require such bravery to be in his presence. You imagine a face larger than the orbit of the moon, a voice louder than 100 blasts of Vesuvius, and you begin to suspect that your limited imagination is inadequate for the numinous experience in store. You hear a thunderous booming voice in the distance, and your legs begin to shake. You look inward. Am I brave enough to handle this? A great journey awaits. Along the way, you face fears and conquer them. Identify streams of self-doubt and ford them. Discern the peaks of your arrogance and descend them. Spot the clouds of self-pity that hang over you and hike out from under them. By the time the road ends, you emerge with renewed confidence, ready, you believe, to meet your maker, to face the face, to perceive a glimpse of the mastermind who crafted the masterpiece. You approach the door of a great castle. Even now, the booming voice hanging over the landscape causes you to question. Am I among the most brave? Do I possess what is required? You throw your weight against the door, enter a grand foyer, and follow a hallway to a grand room. And there you see the face. Indeed, it is larger than the moon's orbit. It is a sight beyond the pens of lyric poets. It is the ocean in its terrifying power and rhythmic grace. It is a face that looks like your father and like your mother. It commands the knowledge of 1,000 scholars, the empathy of 1,000 lovers, the mystery of 1,000 strangers. It is a face that makes the journey worthwhile. It is a face worthy of the master of the universe. You quiver and shake, hypnotized in your cottonmouth ecstasy. The volcanic voice booms forth, blowing back your hair. Are you brave? Yes, you stammer. That's why I'm here. The valleys of the lips curl a little, as though to laugh. Then you hear an electrical buzzing sound. The face grows wavy with horizontal scanning lines and disappears into a flash of phosphorus. Nothing remains in the great space but a small yellow curtain where the face used to be. The curtain pulls back. A wrinkled hand pushes up glasses on the face of a wrinkled little man. He is gout-ridden, has a resting tremor, and a vial full of colorful pills. He is stooped. He is swayed back and balding. You look at each other. He says, "It is not the brave who can handle the big face. It is the brave who can handle its absence." A little Wizard of Oz moment. Yeah, a lot of times we find ourselves looking up to something bigger, wishing there was something bigger, wishing there was something grand, wishing there was some grand creator, somebody in fucking charge, somebody holding the wheel, somebody that we could finally face, that could make sense of all of this, somebody that we could look up to. We see ourselves as so small, and we want there to be something bigger, and it's a little scary maybe to think that maybe this is all that there is. Maybe this is it. It could be scary, or it could actually be emboldening. Knowing that this is all that you have, it makes these moments much more important, much more valuable. And as we're tried right now, like I was saying before, it's this pressure. This pressure forms diamonds. This pressure helps remind us of what is important. It forces us to spend time with small things. All right. I just got a refill on my wine, so probably go for a little while longer. I know we started a little late, so we'll see how many more we get in here. Great expectations. Oh my, great expectations. Man, I've suffered into those quite a bit. Let's see what he has to say about them. As the happy result of a free market capitalist society, we are finally able to determine our own hereafter. It has become privatized and computerized. For a reasonable price, you can download your consciousness into a computer to live forever in a virtual world. In this way, you can rage against the dying of the light by choosing an afterlife that is fast, furious, and spicy, the crystallization of your fantasies. You can predefine your lovers, maximize your sexual allure, zoom around electric pumping cities in your choice of a dozen Porsches. You get firmer muscles, a perfect complexion, and a flat washboard belly. Innumerable virgins cheerfully await your arrival. Cell phones and jetpacks are standard issue. Sizzling cocktail parties run around the clock. It is no surprise that everyone is lining up for this avant-garde afterlife. Instead of slipping into worm fodder, it is far better to choose the moment of your own death and elect the finest of all possible hereafters. The only ones not signing up are a few religious folks who claim that they're waiting for their heaven, imagining they will discover themselves in an afterlife of biblical description. The company, having long ago outgrown the concept of God, attempts to explain to these people that their fantasies have cursed their available realities. The religious counter that God's greatest gift to them is the ability to look beyond what their eyes can see and have faith in something grander. That's not a gift, that's a trap, the company retorts. It's like having a wonderful lover available, but desiring an unattainable movie star instead. The religious don't sign up and eventually slip off into neutral death in a lonely hospital bed. For the rest of us, the transition into the virtual hereafter is painless. When your pre-scheduled moment arrives, you come into the office and recline in the red dental chair. The company nurse assures you that you will feel as though you've closed your eyes in their office and without delay opened them again in your glorious virtual afterworld. A technician presses a button and you become pulverized by a laser beam. A copy of the three-dimensional structure of your brain is recreated in zeros and ones on a cluster of hyper-threading processors. There's only one caveat. The neuroscientists and engineers who have developed this procedure have no way of proving it works. After all, the pulverized have no way to report back. However, it is generally agreed that nothing can go wrong with the download. All of our physical theories predict that reconstructing an exact replica of the brain will reproduce exactly the feeling of being that person, so everyone presumes that it works. Sadly, it does not work. Its failure is not due to bad engineers or unscrupulous businessmen, but instead stems from a misunderstanding of the cosmic scheme. Your essence cannot be downloaded because your essence, which the company did not believe existed as a separate entity, gets spirited off to heaven. Despite your excitement about your chosen afterlife, it turns out that God exists after all, and has gone through great trouble and expense to construct an afterlife for us. So you awaken on soft clouds encircled by harp-strumming angels, finding yourself swathed in a white toga. The problem is that this isn't what you wanted. You've just paid good money for an afterlife of fast cars and charisma and drinking and lovemaking. This heaven, by comparison, seems hopelessly inadequate and stale. You're wearing an ill-fitting white sheet instead of an anti-gravity jetpack. Endless white columns are the replacement for pumping electric cityscapes. There's manna and milk at the buffet table instead of sushi and sake. The harp music is maddeningly slow, and you're still as unattractive as ever. There's nothing to do here. The overweight people to your left are playing bridge. All this recent disappointment has put God in an awkward position. He nowadays spends much of his time trying to comfort his subjects scattered across the cloudscapes. Your fantasies have cursed your realities, he explains, wringing his hands. The company offered you no evidence that it would work. Why did you believe them? Although he doesn't say it, everyone knows what he's thinking when he retires to his bed at night. That one of his best gifts, the ability to have faith in an unseen hereafter, has backfired. Oh, oh. Yeah, the heaven of old is certainly not the heaven that we would want now. And I wonder, like, are there heavenly upgrades? Are there? I mean, because the people of 2,000 years ago, what their vision of an absolute wonderful reality is and would look like, what complete total heaven would be. Um, I mean, they couldn't even imagine iPhones, let alone fleshlights and all the other forms of masturbatory technology that we have invented. I mean, how grand have how grand of a heaven could they have imagined? Um, I hope God, in all of his omniscience, has some better plans if he's out there. All right. So this next one is called Mirrors. Um, and I have this one digitally bookmarked, which is, I guess, one acquiescence I will have to make for the Kindle, in that there is no piece of paper that has slipped out or anything otherwise. But I have a nice little digital record of um, what is probably hands down my favorite story out of this whole collection, and that's it's a high bar. All right, this one is called Mirrors, and this will be my last one. It's a perfect ending point. When you think you've died, you haven't actually died. Death is a two-stage process, and where you wake up after your last breath is something of a purgatory. You don't feel dead, you don't look dead, and in fact, you are not dead yet. Perhaps you thought the afterlife would be something like a soft white light or a glistening ocean or floating in music, but the afterlife more closely resembles the feeling of standing up too quickly. For a confused moment, you forget who you are, where you are, all the personal details of your life, and it only gets stranger from here. First, everything becomes dark in a blindingly bright way, and you feel a smooth stripping away of your inhibitions and a washing away of your power to do anything about it. You start to lose your ego, which is intricately related to the spiriting away of your pride. And then you lose your self-referential memories. You're losing you, but you don't seem to care. There's only a little bit of you remaining now, the core of you, naked consciousness, bare as a baby. To understand the meaning of this afterlife, you must remember that everyone is multifaceted. And since you always lived inside your own head, you were much better at seeing the truth about others than you ever were at seeing yourself. So you navigated your life with the help of others who held up mirrors for you. People praised your good qualities and criticized your bad habits. And these perspectives, often surprising to you, helped you to guide your life. So poorly did you know yourself that you were always surprised at how you looked in photographs or how you sounded on voicemail. In this way, much of your existence took place in the eyes, ears, and fingertips of others. And now that you've left Earth, you are stored in scattered heads around the globe. Here, in this purgatory, all the people with whom you've ever come in contact are gathered. The scattered bits of you are collected, pooled, and unified. The mirrors are held up in front of you. Without the benefit of filtration, you see yourself clearly for the first time. And that is what finally kills you. I have the hell highlighted out of that at the end there. Yeah, when I read that, it really, really resonated. And it might have been, echoes of Lou Reed singing "I'll Be Your Mirror," or you know, all of the people who I have around me that reflect on me and the things that they see, and the ways they help me improve, and the ways that they help me see myself and try to improve myself, and try to desperately catch glimpses of my own reflection and see who I really am, and those outside forces, those outside reflections, that world outside of your own ego, um, is often really the true representation of ourselves, because we have our own narrative, and we have our own concept of who we are. We have this sense of identity that we've worked to build, um, and that we inherently have to believe in. And every once in a while, or sometimes more often, we're reminded that we aren't who we think that we are. You think that you're being wonderful and fantastic, and then suddenly there's a whole slew of people telling you that you were an asshole, or that you were unkind, or that you hurt them. right? And in those moments when you have those reflections, um, that's really what says who you are, because the way that you handle those reflections back on you, the way that you integrate them, the way that you respond to them, really is what defines you. So if somebody comes and accuses you of being an asshole, and your reaction is defensiveness and saying, I'm not an asshole, or is your reaction, huh, why do all of these people think I'm an asshole? Or what happened there? So if it causes you to have a moment of self-reflection and look back in that, maybe you'll be less of an asshole. At least that's what I remind myself. I don't know why I went with the asshole analogy. There are many other reflective points, but I don't know. Maybe that speaks to my own internal narrative sometimes. Um, anyway, thank you all of you for being here in my life, for being my mirrors. Thank you for reflecting on me, and thank you for reflecting that back out into the rest of the world. Um, so many of you bring so much joy and so much fun and so much love and laughter into this existence, whatever it is, and whatever the thereafter might look like. So keep doing that. Um, whether you're sheltered in place, whether you've sequestered yourself out into the woods, um, keep being you, and sleep well.